I'm Leonard Scott Collins. This is the Qabalah of Twin Peaks. I'm gonna go systematically episode by episode and discuss every episode of Twin Peaks uh, by the numbers, according to an obscure system of numerology, the thelemic Qabalah, or if you prefer, the Hermetic Qabalah through a thelemic lens. So let's talk about numbers. 315. Cooper is staying in room 315 at the Great Northern. By the way, this is season 1, episode 1, the first episode right after the pilot movie. Cooper is staying in room 315 at the Great Northern, and if you look at your Hebrew alphabet, every Hebrew letter is also a numerical character. The Hebrew alphabet was designed before the widespread usage of Arabic numerals. If you look at your Hebrew English Tanakh, or your Hebrew Tanakh, if you happen to be privileged enough to speak Hebrew, you'll see that the chapters and verses are numbered with letters, Hebrew letters, not Arabic numerals. So they really do double duty as both letters and numbers. It's not this post hoc thing like the Latin numerology that people try to do. So you take the letters in words and you add them up and you get a number, and then you can imagine that words that have the same number have certain harmonies. So what words in Hebrew add to 315? Well, in Crowley's Sefer Sephiroth, he gives us Gomorrah, as in Sodom and Gomorrah. So the first cities destroyed by act of God because of the immorality of the people residing there. Now, Twin Peaks doesn't ever just go up in flames for no reason, but you'll see over the course of the 3 seasons that 25 years later, Twin Peaks is not the place it is when Dale Cooper first arrives. They're deeply, deeply affected by the loss of their star citizen, Laura Palmer, and there's little earthquakes that radiate out from that central tectonic shift to try to keep this metaphor together. And the social fabric of the community begins to break down. It's also largely due, I think, because of the scheme between Ben and Catherine to make some money by absorbing and reselling the Ghostwood property. It ends up becoming a sort of a private prison, which is good for the local economy, for Ben Horn's economy specifically, and I suspect bad for everyone else. So 315, Cooper's room number 315, Gomorrah, which predicts the collapse of the city. 315 is also Yetzirah, the formation, the world of formation. The 4 worlds in Qabalah are the world of Asiya, and Kant's going to have this idea of things in themselves, the things as they exist when we're not looking at them, when we're not thinking about them. There is some object that has the power to impress upon my senses all of the associations I have for table, for example. I'm sitting at my dining table, and there is an object. To what degree it actually resembles this thing that I think of as a table is an open question, because I don't know whether or not I can trust my senses. But I know that there is some object, and I know the power to project table is one of the powers of that object, because when I speak to other people, we have the same perception of the table. So the perceptions really are associated with the object, and but before the perceptions, that object is in the world of Asiya, and after the perceptions, that object is in the world of Yetzirah. Yetzirah being the world of language, of perceptions, of associations, of categories under which those perceptions are consumed, subsumed, the world of judgments. People live in Yetzirah, and Cooper is using all of the powers of the world of formation there in room 315. He's a fully worldly person with fully worldly powers, full control over his faculties, and has full access to this this thing, Yetzirah. As we know, that's not the whole story. He's going to need to bring things in from the dream reality, or from the world of forms, maybe from Brough, the thing that's not underneath, not the world of objects, but the thing that's above the world of forms, that sort of literally inspire objects according to Plato's view. And it's remembering forms that gives us the power to make those Yetziratic judgments. But it's even more obscure than that, because Twin Peaks is surrealist. So Cooper's going to need access to the super reality, some relationship maybe between form and formation, but the dream world is sort of more like maybe adjacent to, you might want to think of it as like, it's not even an astral world, it's something else. Also, Latin phrase meaning the vision of splendor. I don't know why it matters that it's the Latin phrase, because these numbers will be derived from Hebrew letters, but in the Sefer Sephiroth it gives the Latin phrase for vision of splendor, and the vision of splendor is the magical power that the aspirant acquires in the third grade associated with the 8th Sephira of Hod. This is a mercurial Sephira, and so by the planet Mercury, we can also go through the back door of the planet Mercury and pop out in the second path of Baith. And the tarot card there is the Magus. I don't mean that these are linked through literal back doors. I'm speaking conceptually, just that there's this harmony there by virtue of the planetary attribution. And so we have the tarot card, the Magus, this guy doing, who's the master of his tools and is able to apply them to work. You can think of some of the same thing down in Hod, but I'm going to talk later about divination and how Whetstale's phrase, strength and skill combined with the deepest level of intuition. So these are the tools happening, these relationships that are happening for Dale. He's a full, let's say, initiate of Hod, and as he goes through his adventure for the next 3 seasons, he's going to work his way up through the Tree of Life. We'll see him as initiate into Ferrith, and then by the time he comes back from the Red Room at the beginning of season 3, we're going to see him as maybe a master of the temple, although an idiot. But trying to work through this strength is in silence thing as Dougie Jones. But for right now, he's a 3/8. I think that's all I want to say about the number 315. We can also talk about the color green being associated with Netzach. And I'm not going to give a full picture of Netzach, which is the sphere of Venus here. I'm going to speak in sort of idiosyncratic terms based on an interpretation of the series that I have, which is I think that Laura Palmer is Lilith. And I don't mean that she's serving the function of Lilith in the show, although she clearly is, but that she literally is Lilith, and she's been sent to Earth by the fireman in order to deal with who am I going to say Bob is? I think it's Baal. I think Bob is Baal, and Lilith is dealing with Baal. And there are, you see in Fire Walk with Me, Laura Palmer is sometimes wearing olive and sometimes wearing russet and sometimes wearing black. I think she largely eschews citrine, though maybe that's her hair color. The gold of her hair might be the citrine. But those are the colors of Malkuth, and the demonic side of Malkuth, the Qliphoth of Malkuth, is associated with Lilith. And there's, at least according to Crowley's interpretation of the Tanasar legend, where there's a relationship between Lilith and Venus, where Tanasar believes he's trapped in the Venusborg, romancing the goddess of love, and discovers at the end of Act 2 that he's actually been with Lilith the whole time. If you don't know who Lilith is, this is Adam's helpmate before Cheva, in a sort of modern-y, I think, version of the story. She's cast out of the Garden of Eden because she refuses to submit to missionary sex. She wants to be on top when they fuck. But I think there's maybe subtler interpretations of the older non-canonical Hebrew versions of the story. So Lilith is a woman who's fiery and independent and powerful and knows her own mind. She's replaced because of her power and independence. She's replaced. She's cast out from Eden and replaced. And so, in this episode, we'll see Laura's faith superimposed over Donna's face, and then we'll see Donna wearing this green of Netzach, this Venusian green of the god of love. Everyone in the Hayward household, except Doc, is wearing this really gorgeous green drapery. I think Donna's is like a football jersey, and her mom's is like some sort of heavy fabric dress. And there's more green again when James comes over for dinner, and then Donna replaces Laura in the life of James. James realizes that even if Laura hadn't died, he would have wanted to be with Donna anyway, because she's just more suited to him. And so in this interpretation, James is going to be like Adam, and he is the one that's cast out. He even by the end of the first season, I think he's left Twin Peaks, and he's the only male character that really leaves Twin Peaks. Dale kind of stays there forever, and all the other men or goes back there at the end of the show. More than once he goes back there at the end of the show. He goes back there to fight Bob when he realizes that he's not Dougie Jones, and then he goes back there again to bring Carrie Page home. So James is the character who really leaves, like Adam leaves the garden. And of course, thinking of Laura as Lilith, another time she's replaced is when Maddie Ferguson shows up. Any other numbers? Oh, I just wanted to say something about Major Briggs. Major Briggs, I think, will become Dale's tutor. In the AA, Crowley's AA is a correspondence school. You mail away for initiation, and then papers are sent to you, and then you mail away your diaries, and then more papers are sent to you, and you sort of go up through a degree system proving these that you've attained these magical powers, like the power to sit still for an hour, the power to breathe mathematically for an hour, the power to do certain things on the astral plane, to have visions that are appropriately related to symbols you've never seen. There are tables of correspondences you have to memorize. That happens in Hode, where I'm saying Dale is. And eventually you get to the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. But it's a direct teacher-student relationship in the AA, as it is in Hebraic Qabalah. Hebraic Qabalah is whispered mouth to ear. Fathers are supposed to train sons, but there's a way in which, practically speaking, people find the teachers that are appropriate to them. Guru Yoga, also the same thing. So if we're imagining that Dale is an aspirant working his way up through a magical system, he needs tutors. He needs one-on-one tutoring, and I think that he has more than one of these kinds of tutors. Obviously, Gordon Cole is doing a certain amount of magical teaching, reminding him to keep a diary, and giving him these mysteries to solve, these opaque little clues about things. The cousin, the woman in red, I can't remember her name, but from Fire Walk With Me. And Major Briggs is going to be another one who I think is going to be an important tutor of Dale Cooper's. Of course, we never see any of this in the series. It's something that I'm imagining is happening in the background, and something that I don't think is totally my own invention. I think that there really is more conversation happening there than there isn't really is more conversation happening there, because it's a fucking TV show, God, Mike, come on. But the intention of the author is that we believe there's more conversation going on there than we get to see. Important conversation that we miss out on. And Major Briggs here, when he's talking to Bobby, he said to have one's purpose in life clarified is the appropriate aspiration of every man. And this is part of what should be happening in your initiatory system. That as you go up through the grades, your training helps to sharpen and clarify your will, such that you come to an understanding of what it is that you are for. The idea is something like the idea of having and realizing a destiny. Mike's nickname is Snake? Fucking really? I think it's the Archangel Michael who throws the dragon out of paradise. you won't see that explicitly in the Revelation, but I think by tradition that's what happened. I get confused about this because there's also statues of some saint, maybe John or something, wrestling with a dragon and having a lance go down into, I don't know. But I think the Angel Michael is depicted as being in conflict with the dragon, and in the Revelation, the dragon is specifically that old snake, which tempted Heva in the garden. So Mike's name is Snake. So Mike is both the angel and the devil, both this important archangel, this important fiery archangel, the archangel of Hod, by the way. But also when you do your pentagram ritual, the angel of the south, so he has both red and orange robes. He can change clothes if he needs to. And he's a watery angel when he's in orange, associated with Hod, and a fiery angel when he's in the south, associated with elemental fire. But and we've talked in the pilot episode about how the Twin Peaks has this special relationship between water and fire, and now we find that Mike has this special relationship between the archangel and the tempting serpent, the devil, the dragon. And then, of course, the other Mike is Philip Gerard, who had a special relationship with the devil until he cut the arm off. He got tired of the killing, cut the arm off, the devilish one, he calls it. So I just realized that Philip Gerard, in cutting the arm off, is also throwing the devil out of his paradise. He's no longer in love with music and the pleasures. Is that what he says, Bob? Is in love with the he's doing something else with his life. He's selling fucking shoes or something. But Mike, Philip Gerard, when he was Mike, he was a snake too. And it's going to be explicitly pointed out in the next episode, when we talk about season 1, episode 2. Cooper's going to say the one-armed man is Mike and his best friend is Bob. And then Harry's going to say, oh, you mean Mike and Bobby? So he's going to connect that materially, because Mike and Bobby have been in the cell off and on a bunch of times over the last couple of days. And Cooper goes, no, a different Mike and Bob. This is a different Mike and Bob. It's Leland and Philip. But there's a reason that Mike's nickname is Snake. If that's true, is there a reason that Bobby's nickname is fucking Bopper? Bopper? Really? What's the Kabbalistic significance of Bopper? Fuck off, Mark. Fuck off. I've been Leonard Scott Collins, and this is the Qabalah of Twin Peaks. One at a time, episode by episode, according to an obscure numerology system that I promise I'm not making up. Holy smokes, one more thing I need to say about being replaced, about Lilith being replaced by Cheva. So on the tape that Jacoby is listening to of Laura Palmer, she says, I just know I'm going to get lost in those trees again tonight. One of Norma's no, not Norma. One of Nadine's little tchotchkes is a woman with like trees growing out of her, which is gross. And then in this episode, you'll also see Audrey show up later on dressed in a shirt made out of like with a printed pattern of trees. It's a white shirt with like these black silhouettes of trees. And so Laura has this habit of getting lost in the trees, and Audrey is her form is obscured by trees because she's the printed fabric sort of flattens her out into the trees. We see Cooper sort of flirting with Audrey, and we know that partnership is inappropriate because of the age difference. Audrey's still in high school, and Cooper's a professional man early in his career with the FBI. So the perception of impropriety, and I see people write that off as being like, of the time, like, it wasn't a big deal for an older man to try to romance a younger woman in the 90s, but that's manifestly false. Surely you have young, beautiful women playing opposite older men throughout the whole history of film, but that they're not necessarily pretending to be high school girls. They may be high school girls, but they're pretending to be more often than not, it's an older person playing a person who's in high school, and the high school person is specifically not romancing older men. That's the like after school special sort of nonsense. Usually it's a 20-something in a romance with a 40-something, and they're just seen as an appropriate match because she's beautiful and he's a famous actor or something. So it's still, misogynistic, if you want to call it that, but not pedestry, right? And so the match is so inappropriate that Kyle MacLachlan refuses to do it. He says, I don't mind this little bit of flirtation, but if I don't want this romance developed over the course of the show, we need to find a way. Because it demoralizes Cooper. And then the way the romance is developed is Cooper's like, I love you, maybe when you're a little older, you're beautiful, but sometimes it's not about what we want, sometimes it's about what's appropriate. And of course we know, again, watch the show. Like, I'm not going to apologize for spoilers, just watch it. We know that Cooper is going to end up being Bob, and then Bob Cooper, we suspect, rapes Audrey, and we get the new Horn brother, who's a monster, out of that union. And so here again is another thing. By calling Laura Pamela Leith and expecting that she'll get replaced, we have these little clues about who the new woman in the garden is going to be. It might be Donna, in some ways, or it might be Audrey in other ways, because this clue about that I'm going to get lost in those trees again. And that also sort of tips us off that Cooper is in danger from the spirit Bob. Before we even hear anything about the spirit Bob, we already know Cooper's sort of in danger. There's a menace there because Bob is going to be said to be like a creature of appetites. And that's what we want to think about people who commit violent crime, is that they've succumbed to some sort of base their appetite, even though I don't think that's right. I think it's more abhorrent than that. I don't think we all have killers hiding in us somewhere. We may all have rage and frustration and desperation, but I don't think it's more than succumbing to an appetite to be able to like rape and murder somebody. I think there's I don't think it's a natural appetite. I think there's something broken. But if you want to talk about succumbing to an appetite, Cooper literally eats 3 pieces of cherry pie. And the fun thing about Twin Peaks is that there's vaginas all over the place. People want to talk about David Lynch sometimes as if he's an anti-feminist filmmaker because he treats his women so badly. Oh, I don't think David Lynch likes women very much because they get brutalized. I'm going to say the opposite thing for the same reason. I think David Lynch is aware of the real condition of women in culture, and he's not afraid to show us what it is. When a woman is murdered, the first place you look is to her male relatives and partners. You do look at the boyfriend, you do look at the dad. If there's a other family in the picture, you look close to home, because often these crimes are crimes of passion. But the reveal of the killer was so shocking in 1992 because people, I guess, didn't know that somehow, or that was seen as, how could a father kill their own daughter? So they needed to invent this spirit Bob that could make the mystery more digestible to people. But David Lynch, I think, is a feminist filmmaker who's aware of the real condition of women and is prepared to show us the best and the worst of that, and doesn't give us sort of imaginary feminist heroes who are able to overcome their condition because of their pluck and spunky attitude. He acknowledges that a lot of times it's hopeless. So for us to have vaginas everywhere, the cherry pie is a vagina, maybe the donuts are vaginas, because Lucy sets this up for us every night. It's this idea of care, especially with food. Norma's so lovely, and she makes this perfect pie. There's this, it's like a feminine care for the community that you might even say is an unfair burden of women, but it's part of the real burden of women, and these are symbols of feminine care. So you see these vaginas everywhere, and that seems like an obnoxious thing to say until you realize that in most films there's dicks everywhere. It's penis, 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 penis. Look at all deep analysis of film imagery. Everything is a male sexual symbol, so it's fun to have on purpose overtly cherry pie everywhere as a blatant female symbol, and for all the male characters to be literally eating it up. So for Cooper to eat 3 pieces of cherry pie while he's investigating a multiple homicide and a serial rape, a serial homicide where all the victims are like teenage girls, is supposed to be a little bit perverse and off-putting, I think, and also foreshadow that, if there's going to be a new Lilith, if someone's going to take Phil Laura Palmer's shoes and become Chava, then maybe we also need a new Adam and a new serpent, and perhaps a new God. And so which role Cooper is going to end up filming becomes a mystery to us, and we're meant to be unsettled by his appetites, both for hot pie and for teenage heiresses. That actually is it for me, this one. Thanks for watching.